Revenge. Have you ever wanted to take revenge on somebody? Well, I want to talk about revenge today, and I want to talk about how it can be a good thing and how being successful at revenge can actually improve your life. Now, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, if you've listened to other episodes, you're probably thinking, okay, what's the catch? Because there's no way that Dr. Williams is coming on here to promote revenge. Well, I'm here to tell you that I am going to promote revenge, but I'm going to promote it under certain circumstances. For those of you that came to this episode because of the provocative nature of the title, that's something that kind of just comes naturally to me. And back when I was working as a mental health counselor, I actually had a training in motivational interviewing, which is a type of therapeutic practice. It's one of those methodologies that you can use in counseling in order to motivate somebody in some aspect of their life, where they're defining something that they want, but there's a lot of resistance there, and they're not very motivated to make the change. Motivational interviewing is a type of methodology that a clinician or a therapist will use in order to kind of promote motivation. Well, in the training, one of the things that the person who was teaching us about motivational interviewing was saying was the way that you phrase a question to your client is really where the motivation is promoted. And I had a knack for coming up with provocative kinds of questions. So as an example, I think I remember we were talking about somebody who was in therapy and they were frustrated with something to do with parenting. And in the example, the person who was in therapy wanted someone else to step in and take over the role of parenting, or they wanted to give up their kids for some reason. And I said a version of a question that I would ask in a therapy situation for that example would be, so what you're saying is you believe that someone else can better parent your kids. And that would usually trigger somebody who has love for their child to be like, well, no, I don't think that anybody else can parent them better than I can because I am their parent. And that's why it was kind of provocative in the way it's worded. So when I come up with these titles, there's kind of a provocative nature in the way I'm phrasing it. And as you listen to this episode, you're going to see that what I'm saying is accurate. I really do want to talk about how to be successful at revenge, but it might not be exactly in the way that you're thinking I mean it. So let's jump into it. Welcome to the episode on revenge.
Everything is working out for me. It's working out for you, too. It just takes believing that it is. We can have, be, and do anything. The key is to care about how you feel and choose to feel good right now.
I've had notes going for this episode for months, and I actually sat down to record this very episode quite a while ago, but I had to scratch it because procrastination hit. And I know that when procrastination hits, that means that the energy is not lined up, and I knew that the episode wasn't ready yet. And I'm glad that that happened, because as I'm reviewing my old notes, I see that the theme that I was going with was a kind of betrayal and revenge kind of theme. The way I was thinking before was that you cannot have revenge without a sense of feeling betrayed. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think that my thoughts have evolved on this topic. And now what I want to say is that revenge cannot exist without blame. If something has happened and you are blaming somebody else for something, then that might lead you to feeling like you want to take revenge on them. You're blaming them for an act they committed. You're blaming them for the way you feel. You're blaming them for some kind of condition being the way it is now because of their influence on the situation. And you feel their part in it was wrong in some way. You feel that they have wronged you. And that's kind of where the idea of betrayal came in. But if you have felt like somebody has done something awful to you, and you fall into that emotional state of revenge, then that means you want to give them a little dose of their own medicine. Let them taste what it's like to feel how you're feeling based on something that you're going to do to promote it in them now, the way that they did the same thing by promoting that negative feeling in you. And that's where that state of revenge exists within that dynamic. But just for the sake of defining it, I looked up the definition of revenge and the definition of blame. So I'll offer that to you now. The definition of blame is to, quote, assign responsibility for a fault or wrong, unquote. Now, the definition for revenge is threefold. The first definition is, quote, to inflict punishment in return for injury or insult, unquote. The second definition, quote, to seek or take vengeance for oneself or another person, unquote. And the third, quote, the act of taking vengeance for injuries or wrongs, semicolon, retaliation, unquote. Okay, so that's pretty laid out and clear as to what revenge is, the act of revenge. But we don't often discuss revenge as an emotion, but it is, and it's on the emotional guidance scale. Revenge exists right above hatred and rage, and right below anger. So just as a review, if we are starting at the bottom of the emotional guidance scale, that is fear, grief, depression, despair, and powerlessness. A step up from that is insecurity, guilt, and unworthiness. A step up from that, jealousy, and a step up from that, hatred, rage. The step up from that is revenge. And then the step up from that is anger. So why is this important to understand? Well, it's important because the emotional guidance scale is there to help you to get back on track with your alignment. And when you fall in the bottom half, in that negative emotion range, then there is room for growth. Those are usually the negative emotions that you experience, which make you not feel good. You're feeling bad, and it makes you want to feel better. Basically, you're striving for relief. And I want to narrow in on that because that's different than feeling good. Feeling relief from a negative emotion is a step towards good, but it's not actually feeling good. And that's where this discussion about being successful at revenge comes into play. If you are experiencing those negative emotions that are way down on the bottom of the scale, the ones that are below revenge, such as jealousy or hatred and rage, then that means if you're in that state, then finding relief and moving up the scale towards good means promoting what's next in line. So for jealousy, that would mean promoting hatred and rage. And I've talked about this in other episodes where I'm a different kind of psychologist and therapist because sometimes I promote negative emotions. And usually in a therapeutic setting, that's not something that is promoted. But because I understand the emotional guidance scale, and I know that improvement just means gradual steps up the scale, sometimes that means going for other negative emotions, which are a little bit more of a relief of a negative emotion than the one you're currently in. So if you're feeling jealousy, feeling hatred and rage is a step in the right direction, and it offers some relief from jealousy. Once you're in hatred and rage, moving into revenge is a positive thing. That's the next step. It's the next gradual step in moving toward feeling good, finding your alignment again. So that's what I mean when I say how to be successful at revenge. Well, sometimes choosing revenge is the right course of action for lifting your emotions and getting you back to feeling better. You have to reach for that emotion which offers relief, which means reaching for that next step. So if you're feeling hate towards somebody who has done wrong in some way towards you and you are blaming them for it, the next logical step, and the one that your inner being is calling you to, is revenge. And that's how reaching for those feelings of revenge and those thoughts of revenge are promoting relief and is a positive influence on you. So if you caught it, I said that your inner being is inspiring that kind of move. And that also can be kind of hard to swallow, because if you understand your inner being, you know that your inner being is always in a good feeling place. To consider your inner being promoting such a negative emotion and behaviors such as revenge is kind of hard to take. That doesn't sound godly, does it? But I don't think it's cut and dry in that way. The task, the role of your inner being is always to get you back into alignment. You are always being called to feel good. And it is your human consciousness, what you're focused on, and your beliefs about it, in other words, your perspective on whatever's happening around you, which has an emotional state attached to it. So when you are feeling hatred and rage, your inner being is always calling you up the scale and wanting you to reach for a feeling of relief. And sometimes that means sitting in revenge. And I'm not saying revenge feels good, but at the time, it does feel better. It feels better than that hatred and rage. It even feels better than that jealousy. It feels better than fear and depression and unworthiness. It feels better than everything below it on the scale. And therefore, that is something that your inner being is supportive of, is promoting, is calling you to. It is inspired in that way that it means that you're moving up the scale and moving more toward your alignment. The trick is not to get stuck in it and hold on to it to where now you're in this state of revenge and you're plotting how you're going to go about conducting it. And now you're engaging in it. And now you are just holding yourself down there in the lower part of the emotional guidance scale. And the consequences that come with revenge are going to promote more of that negativity. So to be really successful at revenge, you have to know that it's just a stepping stone in order to get you up to the next stepping stone, which in this case is anger. We are always in the receiving mode of something. And the way that we know what we're tuned into and where our dial is on our vibrational tuner is based on how we feel. So if we start receiving thoughts of revenge and how to go about conducting that, then that just means that that is where we are focused on what's happening in our lives. And therefore, we are tuned to that station and now receiving thoughts which support that. That's how law of attraction works. It gives you more of whatever you're tuned to vibrationally. So it's not that your inner being is giving you thoughts of revenge. Your inner being is sitting in a state of pure wellness and calling you to it. And it is that gradual ascent up the scale which will get you there, which means going through those negative emotions in order to find the better feeling ones. But it's really law of attraction that's giving you the thoughts, not specifically your inner being or that state of consciousness, which is your true self. It is just that you are tuned to that channel, the channel of revenge. And now you're receiving thoughts and inspiration that is contributing to that emotional state which you were offering. You're putting it out, therefore you're getting it back. Recognizing it and not investing in it is the key to continue moving up the scale. The goal is always to get you to feeling good. And feeling better is on its way to good, but just that little bit of relief from hate and rage into revenge is no place to stop. That's not a stopping point. It is just I'm passing through this state of revenge, and yes, I'm having some thoughts about it, and yes, I feel like engaging in it. But because I know that I am just tuned to that vibrationally right now, and I know I don't want to stay in that state, because at the core of who I really am, I want to feel good because I am good. My higher self is always in a state of wellness, and that's where I want to be. When you match up both aspects of your consciousness, your human consciousness and your spiritual consciousness, that is where it feels the best. And we all want to be in that state, all of us, at all times. So recognizing that you are wanting revenge on somebody is great. It's exactly where you are intended to be at that moment. And it is serving your purpose. And it is serving the purpose of offering you relief from those lower states of emotion, which you probably have already experienced when you were wronged by this person. And you are now blaming them for whatever it was that they did. The key, though, is to not stay there. Don't take it on, even though it seems to feel good to have those thoughts and really think about getting back at that person. It's really an imposter emotion because it doesn't actually feel good. It just feels like relief from you hating them, which is the state that you were in before when you were focused on the rage that you're experiencing based on the wrong that they committed. So that is really the key to being successful at revenge, is to not engage in it, to recognize it as the relief that you're experiencing and allow it to progress further up the scale into anger and discouragement, even blame. Blame comes after discouragement. So even though you have this blame for them, sitting with that blame feeling, that emotion of blame, is 3 steps above revenge, which now that I'm thinking about it, makes a lot of sense. Because let's just say that somebody has committed something against you, some kind of wrongdoing. Let's say they hit you. Let's make it a physical thing. Say that they punched you. What is your knee-jerk reaction? It's to punch them back. And isn't that revenge? That's you taking your revenge on them by committing the exact same act on them so that they can feel what you feel. So it makes sense that sitting with blame is actually several steps above revenge. revenge is more of a response. Originally, I thought that this episode would really be an in-depth discussion of the emotional guidance scale. And I'm not going to do that right now. But I do believe that it's broken up. It's broken up into parts. And there's the higher side, which can be categorized as feeling good. There's the lower side, which is categorized as feeling bad. But the thing that I do want to point out is that if you are focused conditionally in your environment, you have much less control about where you are on the scale at any given time. And the key to living in the top part, the majority of time, is to go unconditional, to be focused on those things that have nothing to do with the what is that you're living in your environment. And I'm not saying that's easy to do. It's extremely difficult to do. This is why we're here. We're here to experience this physical life. It would make sense that we're focused on what's going on. But since this is a discussion around revenge, we have to discuss conditions, because the truth of it is, the only way you can ever feel like engaging in revenge is because you're focused on a conditional occurrence of something. Something happened conditionally in your environment which led to you being offended in some way and blaming that person for the offense and wanting them to experience the same thing back. If you are living an unconditional life, then it doesn't matter to you what goes on around you, because you're maintaining your state of well-being despite any of it. And that's the goal, and that's my goal, and one that I have not been able to achieve yet, but one that I'm striving for, because I understand that that's where my power is. My power is in unconditional focus on who I really am. And when you reach that point, I imagine that is the epitome of life. It's that state of being which allows you to control your emotions 100% of the time, because you're not worried about what's happening around you or to you. Your emotional states are not promoted based on your environment or your interactions with others. You're maintaining it within. And that is the goal, to maintain that alignment. Therefore, the conditions don't affect you. And I have to say that this is getting better for me. I find that I'm in a better state of alignment even when conditions are negative, like when my kids are having a hard time, or when they're not listening to me, or whatever it might be in my daily life. I use my kids as an example because that's a big influence in my environment on my emotional state. But because I have been practicing my alignment and I have been focused on controlling my vibrational point of attraction, I'm able to take those things easier now. I don't get as offended. I don't get as negatively emotionally charged when things like that happen. I used to be the queen of knee-jerk responses. Something negative would happen and I would respond immediately with a very similar vibration. It would drop me down very quickly. I had very little control about my own state of being and my own emotional regulation. But now I'm able to just look at it like I'm viewing it on a movie screen. And I don't take it on so personally, as in, this is affecting me and my state. Why is this happening to me? I don't have as much of a victim mentality, I guess is what it is. And if you don't feel victimized, you never want to engage in revenge. That thought just came to me. When we focus on the conditions around us, that has a vibrational frequency. Now, if you're focusing on the negative of the conditions, obviously, you're going to get momentum going on the negative path, and your emotions are going to go downward on the scale. If you're focused on the good conditions, you're staying in a state of appreciation. That's a good place to be. But to go unconditional means that you are able to choose how you feel based on tuning it to who you really are, which is always going to feel good. And then you don't get any kind of response to the conditions around you. It's almost like you're a separate entity and you're not involved in it. It really is kind of a dissociation, but in a really good way. Going unconditional is the goal. It is the state of focus which promotes the most positivity. So let's talk about the revenge that's already been committed. So let's say that you have been in a state of wanting revenge. You have plotted your revenge. And now you've gone and conducted your revenge. What does that feel like? Does that feel good? I think at face value, it kind of feels good. It feels like justification. It feels like getting justice in a certain way for a wrongdoing that was committed on you, and now you've done it back, and now you're even. Now that person understands how terrible their act was. But the truth is, it doesn't really feel good because it's nowhere up on the higher sides of the emotional guidance scale. After committing revenge, you don't feel things like hope, optimism, enthusiasm, eagerness, happiness, passion, joy, freedom, love, and appreciation. Those kind of emotions are not coming forth after conducting your act of revenge. Therefore, that state of being after that kind of feels like it might be goodness really isn't goodness unless you're up on that high scale, feeling love, feeling appreciation, feeling passionate, feeling all those really good emotions. Then you're really not in a state of feeling good. What you're experiencing is relief. You're just feeling, let's call it contentment. Now you feel content because now you're not feeling like a victim anymore, because now you've gone and fought back. But contentment really isn't feeling good. It's just several steps up from revenge in feeling relief. And that's an important indication here, because that can be misconstrued that when you commit revenge, you're feeling good about it. But it's really not good. It's just relief from the revenge. And what happens when you're in a state of contentment that I picture, that's really teetering on which direction you're going to go. Are you going to take it into a positive area or take it into a negative area? Because it's in that state on the emotional scale, which is allowing you to be kind of neutral. And now you're either going to lean one way or the other based on your focus. But what usually happens after you commit revenge? You continue to think about what has transpired. You continue to think about the wrongdoing that was done to you, which victimized you. And you continue to think about all the things you thought about when plotting your revenge, all the organization that went into it. And then you think about your actual act of revenge when you carried it out. Those are not positive, good promoting kinds of thoughts. It's not where you want to be tuned vibrationally if you are aiming for alignment and feeling good. Just the same though, I just want to put this out there, that if you've gone ahead and you've committed your act of revenge, don't be hard on yourself over it. It happens. We are humans, and we're learning about how to find our true selves, to remember who we really are. And no matter what, even acts of revenge are experiences that are important in your life. It's offering you experiences so that you can remember who you really are and define the experience that you want to have. So I don't think anybody should be hard on themselves. I think that you should always show kindness and love towards yourself. So even if you have done something and you're looking at it and you're wishing that you had done it differently, don't worry about it. It's okay. That's why these things happen, so that we can determine who we want to be, who we really are, and how we'll do things differently next time. It's quite possible that revenge was your path of least resistance in helping you along your path to get where you're going. And when you look at it that way, it is kind of a positive thing. It means that it was aiding you in some way towards something that you want. And that's never wrong, and it's never worth beating yourself up over. No matter how you look at it, whatever it is you choose to do, it is serving you in your expansion and your evolution. So it is a positive thing, and something good will come of it. When you're considering the emotional guidance scale, and your goal is to get into that state of feeling good, love, appreciation, and living in that realm, you know you're getting close when you have a feeling of hope. And hopefulness is the step up from contentment. So let's just say that you commit your act of revenge, you're feeling that justice has been served, and now you're in a state of contentment, which is kind of feeling good because it's a big relief from that revenge state that you were in. I mentioned how you're kind of teeter-tottering now on whether you're going to take it in the good direction or into the negative direction. So instead of ruminating about everything that just transpired in response to the wrongdoings that were committed against you and the revengeful act that you engaged in order to achieve what you consider to be justice, if you can then shift toward hope and achieve it and actually feel hopeful, now you are in the vicinity of appreciation. And that's the goal, to get to that point. Once you're in hope, you have just a few more steps up to get into appreciation. And in order to achieve that, what you do is you reach for those feelings in order to literally climb the ladder of the emotional guidance scale. From hopefulness, you reach for optimism. From there, you reach for positive expectations and beliefs. From there, it's enthusiasm, eagerness, and happiness. Then passion, then joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, and appreciation. So to conclude this episode, when considering revenge and how to be successful at it, my number one piece of advice is to recognize it when you're feeling it and don't engage in it. Realize that it's a step on the emotional guidance scale and that you are moving up from even lower states, and that relief that you're experiencing when feeling revenge is a step in the right direction. But don't hang out there. Try to continue climbing up the scale. Reach for feelings of anger, then reach for feelings of discouragement and blame, worry, doubt, disappointment. Just keep reaching for the next step on the scale and really feeling it, finding some way to feel that in the moment and climb your way out of that hole of negativity. Once you get into that state of hope, you are almost there. You're so close that you can almost taste feeling the relief that is appreciation. That's the highest you can go. But my second piece of advice is, if you find that you're in a state of revenge and you want to be successful at it, You've engaged in it. You've conducted it. It's happened. And now you sit in a state of contentment. Make sure that you're leaning toward the good emotions and not ruminating down there in the negative act of revenge, because that will just keep you in a holding pattern down on the negative side of the scale. You always got to lean the direction you want to go. And leaning toward hope from a state of contentment puts you in the vicinity of appreciation. And that is always the goal. The goal that I have for myself and the goal that I have for everybody, because the truth of the matter is, we are all in our best states of being when we are in a state of appreciation. And it's possible to get there, no matter how low you have been on the scale, as long as that is the goal that you have set for yourself. So to be successful at revenge, you allow yourself to pass through it. Don't put any roots down. Look at it like a passing emotion, something that you're working through on your way to your alignment and back into your state of appreciation.
If you're enjoying the podcast, you can show your support by leaving a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. You also can follow Dr. Williams' podcast on all social media platforms and subscribe on YouTube and by going to www.drwilliamspodcast.com. Deliberate creation is the key to living life satisfied, and that is my wish for all of you.